So how are we getting on, Darcy? Are we nearly there for 2024 reporting?
Yeah, no, we're going pretty good. Almost there with most of the reports. How are you going with yours?
Yeah, getting there. Good to have some of the bigger reports out of the way.
Yeah. Actually, how'd you go with that WA early sown winter wheat GRDC project report?
Yeah, really interesting. Difficult year, as you know as well as I do. But if you'd have asked me to predict that on the south coast of WA, spring barley would be the highest yielding out of spring barley, winter wheat and spring wheat, I would have said you're dreaming.
Yeah, spring barley. I saw that the Neo and Planet over there in June and early July, and it was out in head.
Yeah.
And I ran the PTQ graphs for those sites, and it shows that sown that early, those spring barleys have been flowering way outside of their optimal window. They should have yielded shockingly.
I agree with you. Crops that grow in the middle of winter, it doesn't usually all go well for grain yield. And the winter wheats just looked so good. The growth was in synchrony with the spring. They were developing, heading towards that sweet spot for flowering.
Yeah, what happened to make those spring barleys so productive compared to the winter wheats? It doesn't really quite make sense to me.
Well, having a look at this, what appears to have happened is that those main stems, as you rightly say, hardly produced any grain because of them growing in the middle of winter. But the side tillers on those spring barleys compensated and actually grew in tandem with better light conditions and better temperatures as the spring progressed. And at the end of the day, were more productive.
So how come that didn't also happen with the spring wheats as well as the spring barleys? Oh, and what happened to that modelling that said that the winter wheats were going to be the most suited to that environment?
Yeah, I agree. The modelling said winter wheat should be more productive sown in early April than those other crops. But what happened was that the spring barley compensated with those side tillers to such an extent that you had more biomass, and there was more of that biomass come harvest that got converted to grain. So they had higher harvest indices.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe we should have tried some winter barley germplasm, or maybe even some more up-to-date short season winter wheats, something like Brighton.
Yeah, well, that's true, because Illabow's getting on a little in terms of its age, although we had Mohawk. But I agree, it would be great to look at those other options. But one thing really does interest me, and that's whether or not we would have got that compensation had it not been for that August rainfall. Because although last season was really dry at the start, we got good compensatory rainfall in August.
Yeah, that's true. I ran the weather graphs for that report, and we had higher than average August rainfall at all of the sites. And I guess something that we haven't looked at is the grazing of the winter wheat sown that early, which would become pretty important from a farming systems point of view, wouldn't it? And it would have changed some of those economic figures as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the last time that we looked at this work, we only pulled the sowing date forward as far as mid-April. And we definitely saw that grazing improved harvest indices. I think that the only thing against that was that we did get a bit of a knock in terms of grain production. So it'd be good to see if that happened in late March, early April sowings.
Yeah, so you mainly focused on the early sowing window where the spring barleys yield pretty well. So was there an advantage to sowing that early with the irrigation up front?
Well, that's just it. There wasn't. Despite a season where a lot of crops didn't get out of the ground until mid-May, late May, those mid-late May emerged crops were still higher yielding than the ones we irrigated to bring out of the ground in late March, early April.
So this report's a really interesting one. So as acreages get bigger, it's going to become even more important. It would be cool to see this work repeated in different seasons.
Wouldn't it be good to see what happened if we had a real early break? Because that's what the work was set up for.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a report to watch out for, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely, Darcy. Let's see what happens.